Hi, I'm Kate. My sister once said I was just a blur, the kind people forget, the kind they crop out of photos. Then she sent her boyfriend to remind me where I belonged. He didn't slap me, he smashed my face into a locker. When I came home with blood on my face, my parents didn't ask if I was okay. They just told me not to ruin her senior year. But I didn't disappear. I learned how to focus, and the next time they saw me, they couldn't look away. Before we begin, what time are you listening and where from? Drop a comment below. This story, it's not about revenge. It's about what happens when the blur comes into focus. There's a kind of silence that doesn't come from peace. It comes from being erased. Slowly, name by name, photo by photo. That was my life at Columbia Falls High School. People didn't notice me. I wasn't bullied exactly, but I wasn't admired either. I was convenient silence. Teachers called me quiet, but capable. A counselor once said, "Kate, you're like the still water of this school." What they didn't realize was that still water can drown things too. I moved like a ghost through the hallways, familiar and forgettable. I carried my camera everywhere, not to capture memories, but because it felt safer looking at life through glass. I was always behind it, never in front. And then there was Callista. Callista wasn't just popular, she was curated. Every room she entered felt sharper, brighter. People near her laughed louder, smiled wider. She didn't hate me. She didn't even notice me. Like I was already priced and labeled. She'd already decided what I was worth. Everyone else followed her lead. That morning, walking through the south wing, I saw her before she saw me. Callista and her glittering entourage, voices ricocheting off lockers like sound effects. "She's the one who got the state math award and homecoming queen," a freshman whispered. "Of course, that's Callista Braun. She runs this place." Not a glance in my direction, not even a flicker. Later that afternoon, the school packed into the gym for the academic recognition assembly. I sat in the middle row, close enough to hear, far enough to disappear. They read off names. People clapped politely. Then the principal spoke. And a special thank you to Callista Braun for her work on the debate team, student council, and community service. She stood on cue, perfect posture, perfect smile. Then she took the mic. "Oh, and to my sister Kate," she said, "thanks for always being supportive, and for photobombing half my high school career." She paused, smiled. "She's the blur in every background shot." Laughter. Not just from students. From teachers. From parents. It wasn't short laughter either. It stretched long and awkward, like people didn't know when to stop, like they were waiting for a punchline that already landed. I didn't move. My legs went cold. My hands curled around my camera strap. I wasn't in the gym anymore. I was 8 years old again, hiding behind the Christmas tree because Callista told me my dress made me look cheap. But this time, I didn't cry. I didn't run. I watched her high-five a friend and strut off stage without a single glance back. That night at dinner, I thought maybe someone would bring it up. Not to apologize, just to acknowledge that it happened. We sat at the kitchen table. My mom reheated pasta. My dad scrolled through his phone. Callista waltzed in late, glowing. "So proud of you, sweetie," Mom said, touching her wrist. "You were funny today," Dad added. "Wasn't she, though?" He chuckled. "That joke about your sister? Classic." "I didn't think it was funny," I said quietly. Callista rolled her eyes. "Oh, come on, Kate. Don't be dramatic. It embarrassed me." Mom sighed. "Honey, it was just a joke. You're too sensitive sometimes." I opened my mouth, closed it. The words clawed at my throat, but I knew they'd get nowhere. I took my plate to the sink, washed it, dried it, said nothing. No one stopped me. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The light from the hallway slipped under my door like a lie. I thought about my 11th birthday when they wrapped one of Callista's old necklaces and called it a family heirloom. I'd smiled, said thank you, like I meant it. That was the same year I learned how to disappear politely. For a long time, I thought silence held us together. That being quiet made everything easier, but maybe silence didn't hold anything. Maybe it just made me easier to ignore. The next morning, I got to volleyball practice early. Too early. The locker room was empty, humming with fluorescent lights. I liked the quiet, until I didn't. Footsteps, not light ones, heavy, confident, voices too deep for the girls' team. My hand froze on the strap of my bag. I pressed my back against a locker, barely breathing. The footsteps got closer, deliberate. They weren't lost. Then the door creaked shut again behind them. I knew. Mason Jex's voice cut through the air, smug and sharp. "Told you she'd be here early. Girl's a creature of habit." He wasn't alone. 2 others flanked him. team hoodies, expressions full of boredom and ego. One of them opened a Gatorade like they were on break, not trespassing. I moved slowly, reaching for my duffel. Mason stepped in front of me. Leaving so soon? His grin was practiced. Callista says you've been feeling a little important lately, he said. Thought we'd help you remember your place. I didn't answer. The boy to his left slammed his palm against the locker beside my head. The metal rang. I flinched hard. Mason leaned in. You don't belong here, he whispered, and you sure as hell don't belong in her world. I looked up. His eyes flickered. Uncertainty? No, just calculation. Then it happened. He grabbed my wrist, tight. I pulled back. He shoved. My back hit the locker, hard. The edge caught my brow. White-hot pain, then warmth. Blood, running. I touched my temple, saw red on my fingers. I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I just folded. My body collapsed to the floor. Laughter trailed behind them as they fled. The door slammed. Time stopped, then crawled. I don't know how long I sat there. Then, the squeak of sneakers, lighter, faster. Kate! Sarah. She dropped her gym bag, rushed to my side. Oh my God, your face! She reached for her phone. No, I whispered. Paper towels. Just please. She ran to the sink, came back, dabbed the blood gently. The cut burned, but what hurt more, what really seared, was the heat behind my eyes. Betrayal. Sarah looked at me, voice soft. Did someone do this to you? I didn't answer. What would I say? Yes, Callista sent her boyfriend to remind me I was disposable. I let Sarah press the towels to my wound while I kept breathing. That was all I could do. Later that night, after the nurse cleaned the wound and filed a report, I lied. Said I slipped on a bench. She raised an eyebrow, but didn't push. Back home, I lay in bed again. Ceiling staring contest resumed. A soft knock at the door barely registered, then it opened, without waiting. Callista stepped in, like it was her room, like she hadn't detonated a bomb in my life just hours before. She leaned against the door. I heard you were being dramatic again, she said, arms crossed. I turned my head slightly. The bruising had already started to swell beneath the cut. By morning, my eye would puff like a plum. You're not going to ruin my senior year, got it? Her voice was steady, rehearsed, like she'd practiced it in the mirror. I didn't answer. She tilted her head. You think this is new? You think I don't know how this works? You cry to someone, play the victim, and suddenly I'm the villain. Not this time. You won't take this from me. That was when I saw her clearly, for the first time. Not as my sister. As something else. Colder, hungrier. She left without waiting for a response. Just turned and walked out. I stayed curled in bed, hand clenched around the blanket. Not for comfort. Just to feel something. The silence in that moment cut deeper than the locker. Because I knew. She sent him. It wasn't random. It wasn't a mistake. She made sure I stayed where I belonged. Useful when needed, silent when not. The next morning, I pulled on a hoodie and sunglasses, even though the sky outside was gray and dull. Told Mom I had a migraine. She barely looked up from her tablet. At school, I kept my head low. But then, near the auditorium, I saw them. Mason, leaning against the lockers like he hadn't done a thing. Callista beside him, hair tossed over one shoulder as he whispered something into her ear. They laughed. They laughed like nothing had happened. And that was the moment I stopped hoping anyone would save me. By second period, the ache in my cheek had dulled into a pulse I could ignore. But the real pain, the deeper pain, was knowing their laughter echoed louder than the truth. Between classes, Sarah pulled me into a stairwell. We're going to the office, she said, right now. Principal Coleman's office smelled like stale coffee and laminate. He leaned back in his chair like someone who'd already made up his mind. Sarah started first. She was attacked, in the locker room. He looked at me. You were the one injured? I nodded. Do you know who it was? I hesitated, then said it, quietly, clearly. Mason Jex, Tyler, Ethan. At Mason's name, Coleman's eyebrows lifted. Mason Jex, the quarterback? Another nod. He exhaled through his nose. Are you sure you're not exaggerating? These situations can sometimes be misunderstood. There it was. Polite disbelief disguised as concern. He slammed her into a locker, Sarah snapped. There's nothing misunderstood about that. He cleared his throat, picked up the phone. Let me call in your sister. Sarah looked at me, jaw tight. 2 minutes later, Callista walked in like it was a red carpet entrance. Principal Coleman, she said sweetly. Is something wrong? He gestured for her to sit. We've had an accusation involving Mason J. Callista's eyes widened. Perfectly. Like clockwork. Mason, that's insane. He was with me after practice. Then she turned to me. her voice soft, her head tilted. Are you okay, Odie? You must have hit your head harder than we thought. Odie, a nickname from childhood, sweetened with venom. I looked down at my hands. If I looked at her face, I'd scream. Coleman scribbled something onto a notepad. I'll follow up with the boys. For now, Kate, return to class. Sarah, thank you. We left the office. Sarah looked like she wanted to put her fist through the wall. She's lying, she hissed, and he's going to let it go. I know, I whispered. We didn't speak as we walked to the gym. I peeled off toward the locker room, not to change, just to breathe. Later that day, I saw Coach Harvin, the one who always said, we're a team, no one left behind. He didn't meet my eyes. Because when Coleman had asked him if he'd seen Mason near the girls' locker room, his response was spineless. I didn't see much, just some kids. I don't want to accuse the wrong person. Of course not. Wouldn't want to jeopardize Friday night's game. That night at dinner, I stayed quiet, pushed rice around my plate, until Mom brought it up. Principal Coleman called, she said, like it was the weather. Said you're accusing Mason of something serious. Dad didn't even look up from his food. Mom sighed. The school says there's no proof. Maybe you just misunderstood. I clenched my fork. Callista said Mason left early, she added. She didn't even know you were still in the building. I looked at her, really looked. That makes sense to you? I asked softly. Dad set his knife down. Let's not escalate things. Callista's future is on the line here. Callista's future. Not my face. Not the blood. Not the bruises curling like shadows across my skin. I stood, carried my plate to the sink, walked upstairs. I didn't slam the door. I didn't yell. I just pulled out my notebook, the one I wrote in when I didn't know how to scream. That night I wrote only one line. Maybe I am invisible. Maybe they want me that way. The next morning I stared at my laptop. I'd written an email to the school board, attached the photo Sarah took of my face before it swelled. My finger hovered over send, but I deleted it. Instead, I opened a blank document and typed, and this is what happened to me. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't know if anyone would believe me. But I knew this much. Silence wasn't safety anymore. And that thought followed me to school, to my locker, to third period. During class, I asked to go to the library, said I needed a book for an essay. No one questioned it. I walked the long hall alone, every breath a reminder of the bruised rib under my hoodie. Inside the library, it was quiet, calm, safe. I wandered to the nonfiction aisle, and that's when I heard it. 2 boys laughing low and fast. You're lucky Mason didn't get caught, one said. Idiot did it right near the hallway cam. My blood froze. The hallway cam. The one above the locker room exit. I'd walked under it 100 times. My heart thundered. Dude should have waited till after school, the other muttered. But no, had to be a show-off. They walked off, laughing. I stayed still. Then slowly, I stepped from the aisle, returned my book, and walked back to class. But inside, everything had changed. That night, after dinner, sat cold and unfinished on the table. Callista gone at some study group at Mason's place, of course. I opened the drawer of my desk and searched for an old USB drive. I found a small red one with peeling edges. The label read, 6th grade graduation. Curious, I plugged it into my laptop. There was only one file. A photo. Callista in a white dress, hair curled, smile sharp and practiced. I was in the background, half cut from the frame by someone's shoulder. Just a sliver of me, a piece of hair, an unsure face. But that's not what made me stop and stare. It was her expression. Callista wasn't just smiling. She was smiling through the lens, like she knew this image would be printed, framed, and displayed. Like she owned the space then, just as she did now. I sat back, breathing shallow. The joke at the assembly, it wasn't a joke. It was a confession. That's how she's always seen me. Not a sister. Not a threat. An afterthought. I printed the photo and slipped it into the front pocket of my backpack. Then I opened my email again. This time, I didn't draft another message to the school board. Instead, I wrote a new one. To Mr. Landry, District IT. Subject, request for camera review. Body. Dear Mr. Landry, I believe an incident involving personal safety was captured by the hallway camera outside the girls' locker room last Tuesday. I'm requesting access or confirmation that this footage exists. Thank you for your time and discretion. Kate Brann. I saved it as a draft. That night, I slipped the printed photo under my pillow. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like I was hiding from something. I felt like I was hunting something. My heartbeat was steady. My mind sharp. I wasn't thinking about justice, not yet. I was thinking about patterns, about evidence. The more they acted like I didn't matter, the more clearly I saw them. I whispered to the dark. If I disappear, it'll be on my terms. Then my phone buzzed. 1:17 a.m. Unknown number. No preview. I unlocked the screen. A single message. You're not the only one. I didn't recognize the number, but what they sent next changed everything. Attached was a video. I sat up, the house unnaturally still around me. The rustle of my blanket felt too loud. I pressed play. Shaky footage. Grainy. Probably shot from a phone. Mason's voice, unmistakable, even under the crackle of wind and laughter. She cried, man, he chuckled, leaning against someone's car. One shove, that's all it took. Freaking blur. The video cut off. I didn't move. I was afraid even breathing would break the silence. Then another message. I'm sorry, I should have sent this sooner. I didn't know what to do. Rosen. That name pulled something from deep inside me. Rosen Chavez, my friend in 6th and 7th grade. She had slowly drifted into Callista's circle, then disappeared from my life completely. Like everyone else I'd ever meant anything to. A third message blinked through. I have the original file if you want it. I'll meet you behind Ridgewood Cafe at lunch. The next day, I skipped class and walked the long way behind the coffee shop across from school. Rosen was already there, standing under the awning, arms crossed, shifting her weight from foot to foot. She looked different, older, tired, but familiar. Her hands still fidgeted with her sleeves the same way. She didn't speak right away. She just held out the USB. I shouldn't have ignored it, she said. Back then. I took it. She didn't let go yet. But I couldn't sleep. After that joke, the way they laughed, I knew. She finally released the drive. I know what he did, and I know she knew. Why now? I asked softly. She looked down. Because you were bleeding, and no one said anything. Then she turned and walked away. 2 days passed. I didn't show the video to anyone. Didn't mention the USB. Didn't even open the file. I just kept it hidden in my desk drawer, under an old SAT prep book I didn't care about. I didn't need to watch it. I'd heard enough. But then, the envelope came. It was Thursday, just after 5 p.m. I was home alone, Callista at her club meeting, my parents at a fundraiser. The mailbox had one item, a manila envelope, no return address. Just our family's last name and our street, printed in block letters. I opened it slowly, my hands already trembling. Inside, one printed photo. Me, on the locker room floor, blood trailing from my temple. Eyes half open, unfocused. The angle was unfamiliar, slightly elevated, as if from a mounted camera. A gym security feed, maybe? Underneath the photo, one sentence. Typed. I still think silence protects you? I stood frozen on the porch. But instead of panic, I felt clarity. Someone had seen me. Someone believed me. And maybe, just maybe, someone else was tired of staying quiet too. That night, while I reheated leftover spaghetti, my mother popped her head into the kitchen. Sweetie, how about a haircut this weekend? Just us girls? Her tone was light, like a string tugging on a balloon, trying to lift something already broken. I blinked. Sure, okay. She came in, opened a bottle of water, leaned on the counter like she used to, before Callista turned into her son. I just think a fresh look might help, with everything going on. Then she added, too carefully, let's just keep things light this week, okay? Callista's scholarship interview is coming up. She's under a lot of pressure. Any warmth I'd started to feel evaporated. I nodded. Of course. We didn't speak the rest of dinner. Later that night, I sat in front of the mirror, the USB in my hand. My reflection stared back, bruised but composed, quiet but not silent. I always thought telling the truth would break this family, I whispered. But maybe. It was already broken, and I'm just finally looking. I turned back to my laptop, plugged in the USB, copied the video to a hidden folder, then opened a Word document. Typed. I'm not doing this to ruin you, Callista. I'm doing this to stop becoming less than I am. The cursor blinked below the words, like it was waiting for permission. I opened the school board's official incident report page. My finger hovered over the Upload Evidence button. Then my phone buzzed again. She's coming for you next. I didn't flinch. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I just set the phone down, opened the video one last time. There was Mason's face, half lit by parking lot lights, smirking like he was still the punchline to a joke no one should have laughed at. The next morning, I stood in the school restroom between second and third period. My backpack sat open on the tiled floor while I scrolled through my notifications, pretending I wasn't shaking. Then I saw it. A post. Mason. Smiling. The caption read, "Some people bleed easy. Guess we all have our talents." Underneath it, one reaction stood out. Callista Braun liked this, and commented, "And bless her fragile little heart." My stomach didn't drop. My throat didn't close. Instead, a strange quiet settled over me, like fog lifting. I screenshotted the post, locked my phone, then stood for a full minute, staring at the blue stall door like it held some ancient truth. Then I walked out, dried my hands, and went to the library. During lunch, I printed out the post, folded it once, slipped it into my folder. When I got back to my locker, I taped it inside the door, not to hide it, to remember it. To remember what gave me permission. I whispered, "This is it." That afternoon, I was cutting through the gym corridor, heading to history class, when I saw something that made me stop cold. Tallis Garver. A quiet freshman with soft brown curls and quieter footsteps. She was pinned near the trophy case. By Ethan. Mason's friend. The same one who stood and watched while I bled. His fist gripped her backpack strap. Tallis stood frozen, lips trembling. I didn't think. I moved. Walked straight to them and placed myself between them. My voice was calm. Clear. "Back off, now." Ethan looked down at me with a lazy smirk. "Oh, come on, we're just talking." "You heard me," I repeated. Not louder, just firmer. He held my stare, too long. Like he couldn't believe I was still standing. But then he let go. Tallis exhaled behind me. Ethan shrugged like he didn't care and walked away, whistling like some cartoon villain who thought he'd won something. Across the hall, I saw Coach Harvin. Watching. He didn't say a word. But I walked straight to him anyway. "You saw that," I said. He shifted awkwardly. "Yeah." I nodded. "How long do you think silence keeps your job safe?" He opened his mouth, closed it again. Didn't answer. Just looked down like the floor was suddenly fascinating. I walked Tallis to class. She didn't say anything. But as she stepped through the doorway, her hand brushed mine. That alone said enough. Later, I found a note folded neatly in my locker. No name. Just 4 words, scrawled in shaky handwriting on lined paper. "You saved me. Don't stop." I read it 3 times before slipping it into my pocket. At home that night, I sat cross-legged on the floor and unfolded it again. "I thought my voice was small," I whispered. Turns out it just hadn't hit the right wall yet. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was chasing something. I felt like I was building it. That evening, while loading dishes into the washer, my phone buzzed. A new email. Subject: Scheduled testimony opportunity. Body: You've been granted 10 minutes to present a statement and supporting materials at the school board meeting this Friday, 4:30 p.m., room 206. I didn't panic. I didn't cry. My heart didn't race. It settled. Like I'd finally stepped onto solid ground after drifting for so long. I folded the email into my palm like it was something sacred. "Okay," I said to myself, "let's begin." I didn't need them to believe me anymore. I just needed them to hear me. Friday came. The board meeting was scheduled for late afternoon, one of those odd hours when the shadows stretch long across the floor and even the fluorescent lights seem colder. I arrived 10 minutes early, just as instructed. Alone. Just me. The USB in my pocket and everything I had left. The room was rectangular, sterile. A long table in the center, surrounded by folding chairs. A whiteboard stood untouched at the far end. Water bottles dripped condensation onto cheap coasters. At the far side of the room sat Callista, flanked by our parents. My mother in pearls. My father in a blazer just a size too tight. They both nodded politely like they were attending a scholarship luncheon, not a disciplinary hearing. And Mason, slicked back hair, blazer, smile like this was still just a misunderstanding. I didn't greet them, didn't look at them. I sat at the empty seat across the table and placed the USB gently onto the polished wood, like it might burn. The lead board member, Miss Evelyn Calder, adjusted her glasses and folded her hands. "Kate," she said, "you have 10 minutes. I stood. My voice didn't shake. "This is what I lived," I said. "You decide if it deserves silence." I plugged in the USB and tapped the spacebar. The screen flickered. Then the footage played. There was no music, no narration, just the buzz of fluorescent lights, the echo of footsteps, Mason's voice, and then me. The shove, the clang of metal, my body crumpling. It ended with them disappearing through the back exit. The room held its breath. Callista broke the silence first. Her voice was soft, controlled, like it always was. This is awful. I didn't know. I would have stopped him. I looked at her. Not past her. Not through her. At her. Mason scoffed, shifting in his seat. We were just messing around. People get so sensitive. Someone near me exhaled, sharp and disgusted. Then Ms. Calder lifted another paper. This photo was submitted anonymously, she said. Dated 5 years ago. I knew the photo before she turned it around. Callista, graduation dress. Hair perfect. Me. Barely visible. Half cut from the frame. This isn't new behavior, is it? She asked. Callista opened her mouth. Nothing came out. My mother looked down. My father cleared his throat like that might buy him more oxygen. Then came the statements. First, Sarah's. Read aloud, one sentence. She was bleeding, and I panicked. But she didn't cry. She asked for paper towels. Then Rosen's. I gave her the video because I couldn't watch someone lie their way out of the truth anymore. And finally, Coach Harvin. His was typed. Plain font. I didn't speak because I was scared of losing my job. That's not an excuse. The room was quiet again, until Miss Calder spoke. The board has reached a decision. Her voice didn't waver. Mason Jex, suspended for 30 school days. Immediate removal from all team captainships and athletic privileges for the remainder of the academic year. Callista Brand placed on academic probation, pending investigation into collusion and witness intimidation. The board also announced the formation of a student-led anti-bullying reform committee. Optional participation. Strongly encouraged. No one clapped. Because what had just happened didn't need applause. It needed understanding. I didn't stay for the closing remarks. I stood, slid the USB back into my pocket, and walked out. Not out of shame, not even out of triumph. Just release. This wasn't revenge. It was relief. As I turned the corner near the admin wing, the sunlight fell in amber streaks across the sidewalk. And then, Mason stepped out from behind a column. Expression still smug, practiced, like someone who thought the story wasn't over. This isn't over, he said, voice low, teeth clenched. I didn't flinch. You're right, I said. It's just finally begun. Then I turned. Didn't wait for his reaction. Didn't need it. I had a voice now, and I knew exactly where to use it. The community forum was held that same evening in the high school auditorium. You know the one, with the squeaky red velvet seats, the dusty stage lights that only flicker properly if you kick the base of the switchboard. But that night, every light worked. Every row was filled. Parents, students, teachers, even a couple of local reporters I recognized from the town paper. I sat in the third row, middle aisle. My hands rested calmly in my lap. The USB was still in my coat pocket, but I wouldn't need it. Not this time. A school staffer stepped up to the podium, eyes scanning a printed list. Our next speaker is Kate Brand, senior student. The murmur in the crowd quieted instantly. I stood, walked to the mic, and for the first time in my life, everyone watched me. The walk felt longer than it was. Every footstep echoed, not because of the acoustics, but because, for once, people were listening. I adjusted the microphone. Then I spoke. They called me a blur. I paused. I believed it until I bled. No one shifted. No one whispered. My name is Kate Brand. What happened to me in that locker room wasn't just an incident. It was the surface of a wound this school's been ignoring for years. A wound so quiet, most of you didn't even know it existed. I let my gaze sweep the crowd. I've been erased in 1,000 small ways. Split birthdays, hand-me-down praise, forgotten rides, always being the one who had to understand. I found my mother's face in the front row, lips tight, her hands white-knuckling her handbag. My father beside her, looking like he'd swallowed a nail. Callista wasn't there. Of course she wasn't. You want to know how bullies survive? I said. They count on people staying silent, on adults turning away, on friends pretending they didn't see, and most of all, on girls like me believing they deserve it. A low ripple moved through the audience. But I don't anymore. Behind me, the screen lit up. The tech assistant had started flipping through the visual slides I'd submitted ahead of time. Then, without warning, one photo filled the screen. That photo, 6th grade graduation. Callista front and center, shining. Me, cut off at the edge, blocked by someone's shoulder, half a face, half a girl. The audience didn't gasp. They didn't need to. I turned to face the image. That girl deserved more, I said softly. Then I turned back. So do all of us. The silence that followed didn't feel like absence. It felt like attention. I closed with one final line. This isn't just about my story. It's about everyone you've ever let disappear. Applause started slowly. But it wasn't polite. It wasn't out of obligation. It spread real and full and honest. I stepped down from the stage. Didn't look left or right. Didn't need to. Because I already knew what my face looked like now, and it wasn't a blur. Outside the auditorium, the hall lights flickered back to their usual dull glow. The quiet returned. Callista passed me near the vending machines. No makeup, hair pulled back, shoulders curled forward. She didn't say anything. Didn't meet my eyes. Didn't try to smirk or shrug or defend herself. She just kept walking. Word had already gotten around. Mason was withdrawing from the district. That was the language they used. Polished. Sanitized. But everyone knew what it meant. He'd been pulled out before the board could hand down anything worse. I kept walking too. An older woman near the exit touched my arm. Her cardigan smelled like clean laundry and peppermint. "You spoke for my granddaughter," she said softly. "She couldn't be here tonight, but she's like you." I paused, then said, "I was like her too, but not anymore." That night, after most of the building had cleared and the evening folded back into its quiet rhythm, I stepped outside. The air was cool, crisp. Autumn had arrived without warning. Leaves danced down the sidewalk like they were late for something. I pulled out my phone. One new message. From a name I'd learned to look for. Tallis. Just one sentence. "Thank you for standing up. Someday I will too." I didn't reply. Some words don't need answers. They just need to land. And maybe that's what real power is. Not being loud. Just being unafraid. Monday morning came. The same way it always did. But the air in the hallways felt different. Lighter. Mason was gone. No farewell. No announcement. Just gone. His name no longer appeared on the attendance sheet. Someone said his locker had been emptied out over the weekend. Others whispered he'd been shipped off to an uncle's place in another state. I didn't ask. Callista, on the other hand, was still around. But she moved differently now. Her footsteps softer. Her circle smaller. I saw her by the cafeteria doors that Monday. She looked directly at me. No smirk. No anger. Just a glance. A hollow one. And then she turned away. There were no words left between us. Maybe there never were. Classes slid back into rhythm. In history, my seat was still in the back. In chemistry, my lab partner still did most of the talking. And I still didn't sit at a specific lunch table. But something had shifted. I wasn't invisible anymore. Freshmen who used to breeze past without a glance now gave small nods in the hallway. Some smiled. At the end of English class that Thursday, Mrs. Harrows pulled me aside. "We're holding a student-led workshop next month," she said, pulling a flyer from her desk. "On voice, identity, resilience. I think your perspective would mean something." I took the flyer between two fingers. The paper was thick, intentional. I nodded. That night at home, I found a note on my desk. No envelope. Just a folded slip of paper, placed gently on top of my laptop. My mother's handwriting, careful and slanted. "We didn't protect you. We're trying to learn how." I didn't crumple it. Didn't write back. I just slipped it under my journal. Some things don't need answers, but they do need to be kept. By the end of the week, the Community Youth Gallery opened its autumn showcase. I submitted a photo series I titled Blur No More. It wasn't just about pictures. It was memory. Curated, unflinching. The first image? 2 girls in graduation gowns. Callista in full focus, centered, glowing. Me, barely visible on the edge of the frame, head slightly bowed, name tag folded. A half presence. The next few images played with shadows, reflections, photos where movement blurred identity, but always intentionally. Every shot told a story about what's left behind when someone else takes center stage. But the final image stood alone, mounted at the end of the exhibit wall. It was a self-portrait I took the week after the board meeting. I had set the timer, framed the shot carefully. I stood in soft window light, camera in hand, facing forward, centered, not defiant, not polished, just present, real, complete. Visitors moved slowly through the gallery. Some whispered. A few took photos of the photos. I stood nearby, letting them pass, letting the moment speak for itself. Then, Tallis appeared beside me. She didn't say anything at first, just looked at the final piece. Her fingers knotted around the strap of her backpack. She exhaled slowly like she'd been holding her breath for days. "You still don't talk much," she said. I smiled. "I don't need to anymore," I answered. "The work does." She nodded. We stood there together, shoulder to shoulder, watching people pause at the image. I didn't think about the locker room, or the hallway, or even the boardroom. I thought about the 6th grade photo, The one where I was cropped, hidden behind someone else's spotlight. And now, here I was. Same girl, same face. But this time the whole frame belonged to me. Callista once called me a background blur. But I didn't fade. I focused. And they finally had to look. Tiang. The following Monday was uneventful in the way recovery often is. Quiet, repetitive, real. At school, everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same. Students passed me in the hall, but now with eyes that held recognition. Teachers smiled when they saw me, not pitying, but warm. A few even paused like they might say something, but stopped short. Maybe they didn't know what words to use. Maybe that was okay. In Mr. Lenway's photography class, I printed one of my shots from the showcase. He looked at it for a long time before nodding. "You see things most people don't," he said. I didn't answer. I just nodded back. After class, I found Sarah waiting by my locker. She handed me a folded paper, an invitation to join the new Student Reform Committee. "We're meeting this Friday," she said. "You don't have to say anything, but I think people need you there." I took it. Didn't promise anything. Didn't refuse either. After school, I stayed behind to help Miss Garner reshelve books in the library. We didn't talk much. Just the comfort of quiet work, paper dust, and the soft thud of spines falling into place. She didn't ask me why I volunteered. She just smiled and said, "You've always belonged in the story, Kate, even when they wrote you out." I blinked quickly and nodded. Outside, it was raining lightly, the kind of drizzle that barely darkens the pavement. I walked home without an umbrella. Didn't mind getting wet. At home, Callista was in the living room, curled into the corner of the couch with her laptop open and headphones in. She didn't look up when I passed. I didn't expect her to. Mom was in the kitchen, dicing vegetables with more focus than necessary. She glanced up briefly and offered a small, tired smile. "How was school?" "Quiet," I said. She nodded. "That's good." I poured a glass of water and leaned against the counter. "Do you want to come to the gallery this weekend?" I asked. She looked surprised. Maybe, if you want me to." I shrugged. "You can come, or not. Up to you." A pause. Then, "I'd like to." I left it at that. Later, in my room, I pulled out the old red USB again. Not because I needed the video. Not anymore. I needed to remind myself how far I'd come. How many small voices had joined mine since then. Rosen, Sarah, Tallis, even Coach Harvin in his own quiet way. And maybe even my mother, still figuring out what it means to protect both daughters, not just the one who shines on cue. I opened my journal and wrote, "I thought being silent made me strong, but speaking up didn't make me weak. It made me whole." I flipped back through the pages, past the old lines, the bruised sentences, the ink-scrawled doubts, and I saw it clearly now. This wasn't the story of a broken girl. It was the story of a girl who was finally seen. By Thursday, something had shifted in the halls again. Not like before, when things felt threatening, eyes darting away, whispers hovering just beneath the buzz of fluorescent lights. This was different. The shift felt like gravity tilting just enough to let light in. During homeroom, a junior I barely knew slipped a sticky note onto my desk as she passed. "Thank you for saying it out loud. We needed it." In chemistry, Mr. Harrow asked if I'd be willing to help update the class safety guide, including, he said gently, boundaries. Physical and otherwise. I nodded. He didn't say anything more. He didn't have to. At lunch, I sat by the windows, not at a table, not with a group, just me, and that was okay. Until someone slid their tray beside mine. Tallis. She didn't say a word. Just sat, unwrapped her sandwich, ate. I didn't break the silence. She didn't need me to. It was enough. After school, I stayed for the Student Reform Committee's first official meeting. Sarah was already there. Whiteboard markers in hand, sleeves rolled up. Rosen, too. She gave me a tentative nod from across the room. There were 8 of us total, and no one talked about trauma like it was a headline. We talked about systems, policies, protection. I didn't say much. But when Sarah turned to me and asked, "Kate, what's something you wish had been in place a year ago?" I didn't freeze. I answered, "Someone who noticed the background." That night, I walked home past the Ridgewood Cafe. Lights glowing soft through rain-slicked windows. Inside, a couple laughed over mugs of something warm. It looked simple, safe. The kind of moment that didn't make noise but mattered anyway. I didn't want vengeance. I wanted that. I passed the park next to the school. The swing chains creaked with wind. Leaves piled in corners like secrets too tired to keep running. When I got home, Callista was sitting at the kitchen table, not looking at her phone. Just sitting. She glanced up when I entered. I saw your photo, she said. I didn't answer right away. She looked down, then back at me. It was good. Thanks. Another pause. Then, they're saying Mason might get expelled from his new school too. I raised an eyebrow. Guess he's not as charming without a quarterback title. She almost smiled. Almost. But then it faded. I didn't think it would get this far, she said quietly. I let the words settle between us like dust. You mean you didn't think I would? Her shoulders tightened. I didn't know what he'd do. You sent him, Callista. I didn't tell him to hurt you. But you didn't tell him not to. She flinched at that. There it was. The truth finally landing. Her voice cracked when she spoke again. Do you hate me? I paused. Then answered honestly. No. She looked up. I continued. I think hating you would still be letting you define me. She blinked. Once. I poured a glass of water, sat down across from her. The silence was brittle but honest. When she finally spoke again, her voice was lower. I used to feel like everything good was limited, like there was only so much light to go around, and if you got any of it, I'd disappear. I swallowed hard. That's the thing about light, I said. It spreads. Neither of us spoke for a long time. But I think she heard me. And for the first time in forever, I didn't want to win the conversation. I just wanted it to end honestly. That weekend, I returned to the gallery. Not for publicity, not for attention. Just to be with the work, quietly. A few new comments had been added to the feedback wall beside my series. One read, I thought I was the only one who didn't fit the frame. Turns out the frame was broken. Another said, you made me feel seen, even if I don't know you. And then this one, scribbled in small, shaky handwriting. Thank you for showing that blurs can focus too. I stood there a long time, hands folded, heart quiet. I wasn't trying to fix the past anymore. I was building something forward. The gallery director came up behind me. We're extending your exhibit, she said. A local college professor is bringing her photography students next week. She asked if you'd be open to a Q+A. I blinked. You want me to talk? Only if you want to. I thought about it, really thought, and nodded. Yeah, I think I do. That evening, I passed by my parents' room. Their door was open. Inside, my mom was sorting a box of old photos, actual printed ones. I hovered. She noticed. Want to help? I stepped in, hesitated, then sat on the floor. She handed me a pile. Most were of Callista, but every now and then, one of me. One I didn't remember. One I did. But in my memory, I hadn't been smiling. Do you want to keep any of these? She asked. Not yet, I said. Maybe later. She nodded. No guilt trips. No performative apologies. Just her quietly trying. And me finally letting her. The following week passed in the way healing often does. Quiet, uneven, real. Some days I still kept my head down in the hallway, not because I was afraid, but because I was thinking, observing, taking up space in a way that didn't need permission. Other days I caught people looking at me, and not away, not through me. Looking, really looking. Like I was no longer a blurry background fixture. Like I was a part of the picture now. At Thursday's Q+ session for the visiting college photography students, I stood beside my series in the gallery, arms folded loosely, unsure what to expect. But they didn't bombard me with technical questions. They asked about the feeling behind the images. What made you want to take that final self-portrait? I paused. Then said, because it was the first time I wanted to see myself clearly. Another student asked, how do you know when a photo is enough? I smiled. When it tells the truth, even if it's quiet. Afterwards, a girl lingered behind. She looked about my age, but carried herself like someone who had learned not to take up too much space. She whispered, I used to crop myself out of photos. I didn't say anything clever, I just nodded. Sometimes silence, when shared, becomes its own kind of answer. That weekend, I returned to the gallery once more, alone. This time, I brought something with me, a photo I hadn't planned to display. It was from my 8th birthday, one of the few where Callista and I were both smiling, genuinely, not for an audience. We were sitting on the floor, cross-legged, surrounded by scraps of wrapping paper and mismatched bows. I remembered thinking, maybe we're real sisters today. I slipped the photo into the far corner of the exhibit, unframed. A whisper among the louder pieces. Not to redeem her. Not to rewrite the truth. Just to remember that some moments were soft. And I deserved to remember them too. Later that night, after dinner and dishes and the quiet rhythm of a regular Sunday, I sat on my bed with my journal open. No big dramatic entry. Just this. I'm not invisible, and even if they try again, I won't let myself fade. I tucked the journal into my drawer and reached for the small box I kept hidden at the back of my closet. Inside were pieces of the past I wasn't ready to throw away. Birthday cards with my name misspelled, school awards I never picked up, a necklace once passed off as an heirloom. I didn't cry. I didn't burn anything. I just looked at each piece and said aloud softly, "I see you now." And that was enough. That Monday at school, things were ordinary. And that was its own kind of miracle. Callista walked the halls too, but not like before. She didn't glide. She walked. The girls who used to orbit her had scattered like petals after wind. But she still existed. Still had breath, movement, presence. We passed each other by the front office. She looked at me, held the glance, and for the first time there was no performance in her eyes. She nodded once. I nodded back. Not as sisters. Not even as enemies. Just as two people who knew something the rest of the world hadn't had to live through. That afternoon, as I walked to class, Tallis jogged up beside me. "They're adding 2 more students to the reform team," she said. "One of them asked if you'd mentor them." I raised an eyebrow. "Mentor?" She shrugged. "You started something." I didn't respond right away, but I smiled. "Okay," I said, "let's keep building." The final bell rang like it always did, tinny and abrupt. But this time, I didn't feel dismissed. I felt released. Outside, the sky was a faded watercolor blue, the kind that comes only at the edge of spring. Birds flew low, scattered leaves circled shoes, and the world didn't pause for me. But I walked through it anyway. Camera bag over my shoulder. Head up. Eyes open. They once called me a blur, but blurs don't speak into microphones. Blurs don't show up on projectors. Blurs don't stand between cruelty and its next victim. And blurs don't rebuild policy from the inside out. No, I'm not a blur. I'm focus. I'm frame. I'm the one who finally stepped into the shot and stayed there. And I'm not leaving.